So here we are. The Cowboys are 3-8 and pretty much facing their 2020 season mortality right in the face. And so that has everybody talking about the offseason, and in particular, the draft. Because right now, the Cowboys sit with the number 4th overall pick of the draft. Awesome. It's the best icing on the cake for a lost season. But there's been some rumors lately that have propped up involving the Cowboys making a trade to try to get to the number 1 pick for Trevor Lawrence. Rumors that involve Dak Prescott? I'll address those in a moment, but first, thank you everybody for checking out today's video, which is brought to you by betonline.ag. Betonline.ag is your online sportsbook experts. At this point in the season, as annoying as it is, the best thing for the Cowboys is to lose as many games as they possibly can, so that they can get the 4th or perhaps even higher than the 4th overall pick. And then there's a question on, well, what would they do with the 4th overall pick? They have endless amounts of needs on defense, but is there a player in this draft that stands out being the best overall defensive player, worthy enough for the Cowboys to take a stab at number 4 on them? Or should he trade down, maybe, and take a defensive player, maybe a couple of defensive players with multiple picks for trading down? But there's rumors that have started to percolate about maybe the Cowboys could trade Dak Prescott and the number 4th overall pick and move all the way up to number 1 to take Trevor Lawrence, which I don't think whoever gets the number 1 overall pick, probably the New York Jets, maybe the Jaguars, I just don't think that's realistic to believe that either of those teams would be willing to do that trade. And by the way, if I'm the Cowboys, I'm not doing that trade either. Do you know why? Well, a couple of reasons. Number 1 is because Dak Prescott is at worst the 10th best quarterback in the NFL. He could be as best as number 5 in the National Football League, maybe even higher, depending on where you personally rank him. You don't just trade away a quarterback that is arguably the 5th best quarterback in the National Football League. That's ridiculous. Even if Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback prospect to come out since Andrew Luck. You don't make the trade for the potential of greatness when you already have greatness. It makes 0 sense to do that. Oh, and by the way, Jacksonville and the Jets wouldn't do that either, because it's not like those teams are close and they're an elite level quarterback away. They want to draft Trevor Lawrence and multiple draft assets to put good players around him and over years develop a pretty good football team. The Cowboys, as bad as they've looked this year, are still not that far away. That's what's hard for people to understand, I guess, right now. Because, as I said, go back and watch old videos of mine from before the season. This team could win a Super Bowl if they have an average defense. But people in the comments were like, what are you, crazy? They're going to have a better than average defense. No. This team was going to be a Super Bowl contender if they had an average defense. Now, if they had Dak Prescott, they'd be running away with the division with the bad defense. But the bad defense is the thing that's derailed this season. Well, that and the injuries and the turnovers. But you bring Dak Prescott back next year, you beef up that defense a little bit with the 4th overall pick, or you trade down, you get a bunch of assets and draft a bunch of defensive players there, and maybe you spend a little money in free agency on a safety like Justin Simmons or somebody else, and all of a sudden a team that ends up at 3-13 and looked completely lost turns it around and turns into a legitimate Super Bowl contender. The biggest mistake the Cowboys made this season, aside from, the injuries, was believing that they had the right players at the back end of their defense to be Super Bowl worthy. And here's the best part for the Cowboys, who sit at number 4. So the top 3 picks of this draft are pretty well established. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle from Oregon. But there is 6 first-round draft picks at quarterback in this draft. 6. The 2 that I mentioned, Fields and Lawrence, plus Trey Lance from North Dakota State, Mac Jones from Alabama, Kyle Trask from Florida, and Zach Wilson from BYU. 6 quarterbacks in this draft. And aside from the quarterbacks, there's not a surefire, dominant defensive player. So for the team like the Cowboys, you can use the 15 teams who don't have a quarterback in the NFL to your advantage. Because remember, half the league doesn't have a good enough quarterback. They're looking to upgrade from their quarterback. So one of these teams, the Bears or somebody else, is going to figure out who they believe the 3rd best quarterback to be, and they're going to be willing to trade up in order to ensure that they're going to be able to draft that player. So the Cowboys are in a really good spot in order to accumulate a ton of draft picks in this draft and then take a lot of shots at defensive players. Trade up to the first pick to get Trevor Lawrence? Trade Dak Prescott? Why would you trade an elite level quarterback for the prospect of an elite level quarterback? It's ridiculous. But there is one way the Cowboys will draft a quarterback, and that is if Dak Prescott remains unsigned by the time that the draft rolls around. Because Dak is going to have tons of leverage, right? I mean, he goes down, season gets completely derailed. He can go back and say, look, you need me. But if the Cowboys take a quarterback at number 4, they could use that as leverage to get Dak to sign, because we've got this young, cheap quarterback here in the fold, and you're older and more injury prone and whatever they want to throw at him in negotiations. And then down the road, if the Cowboys do end up signing Dak, they could potentially trade that quarterback that they took with the 4th overall pick. Either way, they're in a good spot, and there's no way in hell they're trading Dak Prescott to trade up for the 1st overall pick. Thanks everybody for checking out my video. It's sponsored by betonline.ag. Oh, and by the way, if you have not yet, please hit subscribe and ring the bell, because I post videos on your Dallas Cowboys.